Hi, welcome to Throw In presented by DITV Sports. I'm Ethan Brander.
And I'm Max von Gries.
Today we're going to be talking about notable fantasy performances from Week 5 and players you may want to stay away from or start in Week 6. To start, do you see that Darrell Henderson this week split carries with Sony Michel?
I did see that. I saw that Sony Michel is still kind of getting back from a little injury that he has, but if you want to go further into that, what you're thinking about that, go ahead.
Yeah, so as many people saw, Sony Michel was picked up via trade from the New England Patriots a few weeks ago. And it's been expected that the Rams would go more towards running back by committee, and it's starting to look like that as they had 28 rushing attempts. 17 of them were given to Henderson, but 11 were taken by Sony Michel. Now, this coming week, they play the Giants. So, obviously, you're going to start Henderson because the Giants suck.
But they're horrible.
They're horrible. But you might want to look out because Michel is coming up with his carries. So, I think personally, I really like Henderson, but his status as a running back too, maybe moving more towards a flex option if Sony Michel starts to really take over those carries.
Yeah, so we're definitely saying keep starting Henderson, but at running back number 2, but eventually he might be looking good for that flex option. The more carries that Sony Michel gets added into the mix, and more Sony Michel gets, I guess, adapted to the new offense that he has.
Exactly. I'm more saying start Henderson because they're playing the Giants, but Henderson still is a very good running back. He's done very, very well after Cam Akers went out earlier this season with his torn Achilles. Which was brutal.
It had to be tough because Cam Akers, one of the rising young stars of this league. You hate to see him go out with the Achilles injury or whatever leg injury he had, and now it's pretty much every man for themselves with running backs. And so I think Henderson is good for New York Giants to play against him, and I think he'll do pretty well. I think.
Exactly. Yeah, Henderson's great. Michel's been a great pickup from the AFC East New England Patriots. And now let's throw it to another AFC East team that had notable performances, the Buffalo Bills' Emmanuel Sanders. Now, old Emmanuel Sanders had 2 touchdowns this week, but only 4 targets, which is pretty insane for a 35-year-old receiver?
Yeah, it's a guy that's been through the ringer, I'd definitely say. And I mean, receiver ones, I can definitely see people starting Diggs and Cole Beasley, maybe Beasley at receiver 2, but yeah. you gotta hate to see them just not getting any touchdowns in that game. However, if you're thinking about starting Sanders after that performance, I'm not sure if you should.
No, even though the Bills put up 38 points, I believe, on the Chiefs. The Chiefs have a pretty suspect defense, so I wouldn't really look at the points. Don't put too much faith into the fact that Diggs and Beasley didn't really get targeted this week. Sanders getting those targets was big, but a lot of those targets went to Dawson Knox, the tight end for the Bills.
Huge game. He had an absolutely huge game.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. If Knox can develop into one of the better tight ends in the league, that offense is going to be dangerous.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to stop them.
No.
So, yeah, and if you're a fantasy football owner this week, I sure hope that you started Lamar Jackson. I know I did. I started Lamar Jackson.
I did not. I lost because of him.
Yeah, I mean, look, Lamar had a statement game. Yep. He had 404 and Mark Andrews, and I think those are the 2 big guys coming out of Baltimore for fantasy owners.
Yeah, the 1-2 punch of Andrews and Jackson has been huge. The Ravens really don't have that receiver 1 right now.
No.
Especially with their first round draft pick, Rashad Bateman going on IR. Hollywood Brown he's been good, he's been bad. He isn't it yet. Although he has a lot of talent, I'm not sure if he's really going to be that guy. We have to wait and see and hope that Bateman can do something for Lamar, because if he can get an elite receiver like a Devontae Adams or a Tyreek Hill, he's going to be unstoppable.
I agree. I think the whole The whole misconception of him only being a running quarterback, that was, I don't know how many years ago, and I think people are still having doubts about Lamar, which I'm not sure if they really should, especially when he throws 443 yards all over a defense. But I agree that there's just one little missing piece, and I think it's that receiver one for the Ravens. I mean, they have Mark Andrews. He's definitely getting a lot of the touches, but like you said, I think they definitely need a receiver one, and then I think their offense will be unstoppable.
Unstoppable, yeah. They coming into the season, they really look like they probably were going to need that running back one along with the wide receiver one. Now when you have Lamar, he doesn't care. He's fine. He's tearing it up. But let's go to another Northeast team, the Philadelphia Eagles.
Talk about a team whose offensive capabilities just aren't even close to those of the Ravens, especially if you're a fantasy owner last week. I'm unfortunately with this demographic. If you started Miles Sanders at any of your running back positions or flex positions, that might be the last time you start him. I know it definitely is for me. I'm not starting Miles Sanders at the flex or running back too, considering he only had 11 touches for 47 yards in an offense that seemingly does not run the ball. It's like there's plenty of opportunities. I get confused watching the game. There's plenty of opportunities for them just to hand the ball off to Miles Sanders, but no, it's a very confusing offense.
Exactly. Miles Sanders was projected as a first-round fantasy draft player this year and has done almost nothing. It makes no sense. Look, Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith are great players, but they're both so young. Devontae Smith is a rookie, and Jalen Hurts, my apologies, in all honesty, is still a rookie. He's not yet that starting player. He has the confidence to back it up because he did play in the Nick Saban Alabama offense for years and then went over to Oklahoma and played with Lincoln Riley. But he is not yet a premier starting quarterback. So I don't understand why they are not using their very, very good running back in Miles Sanders. It makes no sense.
It makes zero sense at all. And just being a fantasy owner like myself or Ethan, you watch the games for not your favorite team. You'll watch the teams that you have players on that team, and I just cannot watch it. I cannot stand to see that they're not handing it off to him. And yeah, I might be a little too, I guess, overzealous of wanting them to hand it off 500 times, Miles Sanders, but they passed the ball 24 times in the first half to only 4 rushes. You're trying to protect your young quarterback, really good quarterback. Let me see. I like Jalen Hurts. I like that he's a dual threat. I like he's like a Swiss Army knife. He has a lot of different things that he can do. He can scramble. He can definitely throw, and he's just a guaranteed leader. He's captain of the Eagles after just only being on the team for a year. I just don't understand why they're trying to throw it so many times, and inevitably maybe even Jalen Hurts gets injured. And just hand the ball off more, Philadelphia, and then I'll start Miles Sanders in. But for the time being, you're cut off. No more Sanders.
No more Sanders. I have been, for a team that I am not a fan of, I have never been so mad at a team that I am at the Eagles right now. It's dumb. It's inexcusably stupid that they are doing what they're doing on that offense with a team that is honestly not as bad as they were projected to be, but it's just bad because of play calling. Now jumping over to another NFC East team, let's talk about Saquon's injury.
Yeah, if you're a Giants fan, you've got to be very upset after this past week's performance. Obviously, Danny Dimes going down with what seems to be a headshot to his brain. I mean, he got injured and then he starts stumbling off the field. So who knows how long he's out for? So there's your QB1 gone in the New York Giants. But then an absolute, I could barely watch the injury of Saquon's ankle. I mean, he obviously steps on someone else's foot and it got all twisted up, and it's just really gross. And so now, if you're a Giants fan, if you're a fantasy owner that had Saquon or Danny Dimes, who are you going to look to? Who are you going to look to pick up that slack?
So right now, the backup for the Giants is Devontae Booker, who's a pretty good player. He's done some solid work in the past, but he's no Saquon. And this week, if you want to pick him up as an emergency flex, do it. But the lowly Giants play the Rams. So having Aaron Donald going up against possibly no Danny Dimes. You're not going to have the face of your franchise.
No Sterling Shepard either.
No, he's out too.
With a hamstring, he's out. He's been at the bottom of my bench. Hopefully, I can integrate him into the lineup, but he's also out.
The spread on this game is just going to be insane. It's going to be like when Alabama plays Mercer or something. They're going to get absolutely annihilated by the Rams this week. So do not start. Honestly, don't start anyone on the Giants this week. I think I can feel pretty confident about saying that.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that.
Let's make it a whole thing. Stay away from New York City football in general right now.
Unless you're Buffalo.
Unless you're Buffalo. New York City, not Buffalo.
Yeah, New York City. You're right.
Yeah, because the Jets aren't doing much better. Zach Wilson looks okay, but he's not. He's still developing.
He's still developing. It's hard to expect your number one draft pick to really step into an organization like the Jets and then completely flip the whole entire organization around. There's going to be some time. I mean, I still think the New York Giants are in that phase of still some time with Danny Dimes. I mean, he's progressing as a pretty good quarterback. It's just it takes some time to get the pieces around the kind of like the gem in your team. So I think the gem in the Giants are Saquon and Danny Dimes, and when you don't have either of those guys, I don't know if they're putting up a point on the board.
Yeah, they're just not the team. And when Saquon does return, because he's likely only out for maybe a week or two, he's still not going to be at full health. This is a 1 or 2 week return injury, but not a 1 to 2 week injury where he'll be 100%. So he's very likely going to be splitting carries with Devontae Booker. So I really wouldn't start Saquon in my running back one spot or consider him a running back one for at least a few weeks until we can really see how he's been playing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, especially since a lower ankle injury was a low ankle sprain, not a high. The high ankle sprains, those are the ones you have to kind of look out for. But especially with a low ankle sprain, it's kind of going to be a nagging injury to someone that really depends on his ankles, his knees. Like Saquon Barkley, he's making those cuts all over the place. I'm with Ethan where I don't know how many. It's going to be a couple of weeks until you can expect to start your star Saquon in your fantasy league.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be a couple of weeks before the Giants are watchable again, unless you like watching blowouts. But moving on, let's talk about another very, very famous player who's coming off an injury, Julio Jones. Julio is likely going to be coming back this week from his hamstring injury, and has really only had one good week this season after he missed last week. He had 1 week around 20 points, but everything else under 10. It just doesn't make sense. He might be a little bit older. I believe he's 32, but that offense should be so much better. They have Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill, who honestly is a pretty good quarterback.
Yeah,
he's pretty good.
He's underrated as a quarterback. I mean, him and Derrick Henry last week ran all over. I forgot who they played, but yeah, I think Tannehill was very underrated. And to go along with the Julio situation, I picked up Julio off the waiver wires because he was injured. I picked him up, and I've been waiting to start him at my flex. And that's where I'm kind of iffy because right now my flex, I have Jamar Chase. I've got Jamar Chase Bank on my team, and he's racking up the points from Joe Burrow. So the predicament I'm in is, do I really want to take that chance starting Julio where he's not really been producing in an offense where you think he would?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I'm kind of in the situation of the viewers where, do I start Julio?
Honestly, this is one of those things where it might just be a gut feeling. It's hard to predict if he's going to do well because we don't know who Tannehill likes to throw to more yet because we haven't seen enough of it. A.J. Brown is still there, and he's one of the better young receivers in the league. Derrick Henry really doesn't do a whole lot of catching passes out of the backfield, but he doesn't need to because he's the best downhill runner in the league by far. If you say anything else, you're wrong. It's Derrick Henry. He's the best. But really, it's a hard thing to say. I love Julio. I've loved him since I was younger. I'm a Packer fan, and one of my most memorable moments in watching football was the 2014 NFC Championship game when Julio torched us and kind of ruined my hopes for that season. But still, he's still that I still think he can be that player.
He's definitely that type of guy where you can throw it up and he'll go up and catch it. But I think the issue that they're finding in Tennessee right now is you're coming from Julio Jones, who's on an Atlanta Falcons team with Matt Ryan, I mean, he had a couple years ago, he had that MVP season where he just torched people up with how many passes he'd throw and all these beautiful passes. You're going from that type of offense to a Mike Vrabel offense in Tennessee, who's very run heavy, kind of play action. They already have their kind of play action guy in A.J. Brown. I'm not sure really how well of a fit this is for Julio. And so that's why I'm definitely on the fence for starting him over, like I said, Jamar Chase Bank, who is going insane.
Exactly. I wouldn't start him over Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, right now, is the clear-cut #1 receiver for a very exciting Bengals offense.
Very exciting.
But Julio came into the Titans after they'd gotten rid of Corey Davis this offseason.
Yeah.
And looking at what it was supposed to be, that was supposed to be the big upgrade. That was supposed to take this offense to the next level, and it hasn't yet. The Titans are just a weird team. They're such a week-to-week basis. You just don't know if they're going to be good or bad. That defense is not good, then they're okay, then they're not good. The only really consistent thing on that offense has been Derrick Henry. So I have Ryan Tannehill as my quarterback. He has been pretty consistent around just under his projected points, but he's a hard player for me not to put in just because you look at these receivers that this guy has and you look how he's been the past couple of seasons. He should be doing better, and I think he will, but I just don't know. What do you think about that, Max?
Yeah, like I said, I'm definitely on the fence about starting Julio. I think Ryan Tannehill has the capabilities of having a huge season. He's done that in the past. He's known as that kind of underrated quarterback, but seems to be able to get everything done. He's a leader and he's a veteran, and it's just whether or not this new chemistry that him and Julio, I don't know if they found it yet. And I think once they find that, then later on in the season, that's when I'll feel comfortable enough with putting Julio as my flex, maybe even my receiver too. It just depends, because it's kind of hard to replace Scary Terry McLaurin. So
It's so weird saying that Julio Jones would be at best a receiver 2 right now with as prolific as he's been. He's probably, between him and Antonio Brown, they have been the best receivers of the 2010s. Pretty much everyone can kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
For the 2010s, they were the 1 and 2, and obviously Calvin Johnson.
Matthew rolls the pocket to the right, pumps, now comes back to the left, looking deep, throw into the end zone, wants Calvin, well covered, he goes up, he makes the catch, are you kidding me? Oh, Megatron, you did it again!
I'm Max von Gries.
I'm Ethan Brander. We'll see you next week.